this meeting to order on April 24th, 2018. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we have a special guest up here with us, Miss Pam Spencer, our Public Information Officer. Do you mind calling roll for us?
No problem. Commissioner Abraham?
Present.
Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Present.
Mayor Harless?
Present and here. Commissioner Holland, would you lead us in invocation, please?
Be happy to.
You'll stand with us.
Dear Lord, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Give us a spirit of service. Help us see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and to treat all persons with the reverence they deserve. We seek a sense of welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, and the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement. Amen.
Amen.
He'll join us in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Are there any additions or deletions tonight?
Yes, Mayor, we have an executive session to add to the agenda. Oh, it's already on. Sorry.
All right.
Got it on there.
Excellent. Okay, so tonight we have two presentations. We have, as everyone probably knows by now, been talking about the opioid crisis in Kentucky and specifically how it relates to our local situation here in Paducah. So we have a very special guest tonight. We actually have Terry Peeler here from Ladies Living Free, and I'm going to let you come up and do a little presentation, then introduce our very special guest. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We're going to hear a really, I think, remarkable story tonight from someone. So, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Harless and the commissioners, for allowing us to come and speak to you about Paducah Lifeline and Ladies Living Free as it relates to the serious opioid and drug addiction that we have in this community. Our mission is to provide men and women with Christ-centered solutions to drug and alcohol addiction. We are committed to helping individuals become spiritually alive, mentally sound, and physically well through faith and obedience in Jesus Christ. Kentucky currently is the third highest overdose rate. Kentucky currently has the third highest overdose rate in the country. 4 people overdose each day in our state. That's 28 people a week. As clients enter our facilities, we are seeing that meth and opioid are the 2 leading drugs that they are addicted to. Our success rate over the last 3 years is 62% based on clients that have completed our 9-month program, and we're still sober 1 year later. We currently can only help 20% of the men and women that reach out to us for help because of our lack of space. Paducah Lifeline and Ladies Living Free was able to offer life-changing experiences to 82 men and 50 women in 2017. 111 came from counties in Kentucky, 12 from Illinois, 6 from Tennessee, and 1 each from Missouri, Alabama, and Florida. 132 people struggling with drug and alcohol addictions given an opportunity to not only change their life, but a possible chance to help change their family's outcome. It all started by them making a decision to fill out an application and agree to do an interview with one of our directors or staff. Our 9-month program isn't easy, but it is so worth it. We want to help more people struggling with these addictions, but we don't have the room, and the facilities that we have are in really poor shape. Our goal is to build new facilities at the locations where we are. Both places are out in the county, but close to town. I would like to invite any of you who would like to come see our facilities so that you can see firsthand what we are dealing with. Also, if any of you know some grant opportunities or money that could be available for treatment centers, please let us know. One day soon, we will have buildings that can accommodate twice as many people as we do now. Think about the lives that this will impact for our community. These expansions will allow us to finally be able to receive monies from the state because we will qualify for insurance money for our clients in first phase. These expansions will also allow us to help with the Angel Initiative that was recently introduced in Western Kentucky. Paducah Lifeline and Ladies Living Free want to be ready and available when an addict turns themselves in to either the state police or our local police department. We currently receive our financial support from individuals, churches, businesses, and the clients pay a $900 intake fee. When they move into second phase, they pay another $900 once they get jobs. If we were able to collect that $1,800, it only covers about 1/4 of what it actually costs to put a client through our program. By changing a life that is finally free from addiction, it can make a huge impact in their family for generations to come, and it also can make a big difference in our community. I believe that Paducah Lifeline and Ladies Living Free are doing their part in helping fight the fight against drug addiction. When you hear of someone who needs help with addiction, please remember us because we want to be there ready to help. Now I would like to introduce to you Ashley Miller, who will share her story. She graduated from Ladies Living Free in March of 2014. She now is the office manager at Paducah Lifeline, and she supports her husband Eric, who is our men's director. Eric is also a graduate. Their lives are proof that addiction can be overcome.
And Ashley, if you don't mind, before, I'm going to ask Mark, who can we ask to go ask the folks outside? I don't know, Greg, I'm looking at some possible faces in the room. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You'll get bonus points, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
I'm used to seeing that.
All right, maybe they'll simmer down a little bit.
I'm going to play a video for you guys. Do you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. My name is Ashley Miller, and I grew up in Murray, Kentucky. My journey started almost 5 years ago whenever I entered into Ladies Living Free. My life was one of loss and brokenness up until this point. Regret and shame was my identity. I was raised with parents who abused prescription medication, and our life was centered around their addiction. I was introduced to the bad before I ever knew there was any good. We've had our house burned down, my sister's been shot at, and my name has even been changed due to us being in the Marshall program. Around the age of 7, I found myself hiding my parents' pills underneath my pillow to calm the storms between them. If not, one would steal from the other as soon as the first was to fall asleep. This only turned into anger, and to ease the anger, I started to use drugs to cope and hide the pain. At the age of 14, I ended up in the ER for taking too many of my parents' medication, and it just escalated from there. Sometimes I think my behavior was a cry to help in a sense. I knew I was created for more, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I never knew of another way. I swore I would never be like my parents. However, most kids seem to grow up and do what they learn. I met my soon-to-be husband a couple years later, and our relationship was built on a foundation of drugs, and neither one of us had any form of spiritual life. We tried to paint that perfect picture of a happy family. However, we had no idea what that consisted of. The next few years, I would spiral out of jails, treatment center, and my marriage for the same reason, each time drugs. You could say the kids is what held us together. They were the glue to my madness. This insanity continued until 2013, whenever I found myself sitting in jail for 12 counts of controlled substance and a list to go along with it. My lawyer looked at me and said, "This has rehab written all over it." I said, "Great, sign me up." This was my 3rd treatment center, but little did I know it would be my last. Once I got to Ladies Living Free, I was able to sit still long enough to see that there was a better way of life. The program offered me love, but most importantly, they did not enable me, and they taught me structure. I was able to take a look at myself and work through my past and core issues that I had buried. Staff held my behavior accountable to the point where I wanted to change, and they instilled in me the 5 components of recovery. I was able to find my identity through Christ, and no longer do I identify myself through my past actions. I had to come to terms with the shame and the guilt surrounding the wreckage of my past, the life I had impacted, the wasted time, In recovery, I realized that I can use the most disgraceful and embarrassing moment in my past to help others who are coming through the program. It's almost magical today. This shame became something that I could use. My past is one of my most valuable assets in helping people today. Today, I know I'm a product of my past, but I do not have to be a prisoner of it. 3 months after I entered the program, my husband entered Lifeline voluntarily because of the change he's seen in me. If only I would have had the perfect life, I wouldn't experience that hurt, but now I'm able to share my story of hope and connect with others going through the same pain and walk this journey with them to complete freedom. My marriage that was once broken and damaged is now restored and better than ever. My husband and I are now employed for the ministry and get to have a front row seat at watching the transformation from day one through the clients that he continues to bring to that ministry. The struggle that once tried to kill us now empowers us. My life has been rises and falls, highs and lows. On my journey, I've watched the addiction take both of my parents. This addiction's taken my sister and her husband. I'm here today to take those generational curses off of my family. I don't want people to forget them, though, the good and the bad. They wanted to get their life in order. They had plans. They were looking towards the future, looking to be able to see their children and their grandchildren grow up. It's a horrible thing for a daughter, a sister, for anybody to have to go through. Not long after my brother-in-law passed, my sister started dating a guy that was a user, and of course it was difficult to give her direction being the little sister that I was. Anytime I confronted her, she would deny it. I mean, she was always telling me, "Ashley, I made a mistake. I can fight this. I'm gonna stay away from it this time." I remember telling her one day, "I'm to the point that I'm preparing myself for a bad phone call about you." So I kind of prepared myself. You can be as mentally and physically tough as you want to be. I've seen a lot, probably seen more than others, and I've experienced a ton, but you can't be prepared for it though. When it comes to your own sister or family member, I cannot express the feelings and the loss. It never gets easier, because that void will always be there. I appreciate you guys allowing me to share my story. I can say I'm one of the lucky ones that's made it out of that hell alive. I want to share some facts with you on how the growing opioid epidemic is affecting our world. Like Ms. Terry said, 4 Kentuckians die every day. An American dies every 19 minutes from this opioid overdose. That's more than 122 people dying every day from syringes of heroin, gel caps of fentanyl, and excess of oxycodone. I hear stories all the time of how the cycle began in an individual's life, from just playing football, and I got hurt. They prescribed me painkillers, Percocets, Oxycontins, and then it just took off from there. These individuals are worth saving. My family was worth saving. Opioids reach every part of society, blue collar, white collar. It reaches everybody every day, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. It becomes easy to talk about the drug, the overdose, like, yeah, it's just another one. Look at the families that it's affecting. To see the children involved, the heartache, it's overwhelming. You get numb, but you do not give up. You can't give up. They're human beings. A lot of things are lost in the world today, and humanity is one of them. Their families want them to be clean, and they want to be clean. It's just wanting and doing is so foreign. Addiction hijacks the brain, and when you go through withdrawals, you experience depression, anxiety, chills. It's like having the flu times 4. You think you're dying, and at times you wish you were. In 2016, we lost over 37,000 to auto accidents, over 36,000 to suicides, and over 65,000 to overdoses. Without Paducah Lifeline and Ladies Living Free, I could have been one of those statistics. 1 in 7 in the U.S. will face addiction, and I can almost guarantee you almost every family member has been affected by this disease. Effective outcomes are going to require all of us coming together in partnership. It takes an army to strengthen our communities, to support men and women who are re-entering society. This addiction kills, steals, and destroys everything it touches. Addiction does not discriminate. It knows no cultural, financial boundaries. These people going through this are not deviant. They are ordinary citizens, our neighbors, our family members. I don't ever think I've met one user who I would consider to be a bad person. No one wants to be an addict. If your family member is struggling with an addiction, Love them. Don't fight them. Don't judge them. And for everything holy, pray for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Your story is so powerful and it gives me hope. I'm sure that's the same feeling up here as we've heard how our community is trying to respond to this issue locally. And thank you for what you do at Ladies Living Free and Lifeline. We appreciate you so much. All right, we're going to transition a little bit. We have another special guest here tonight with us, Greg Copley from the Center for Applied Energy Research at University of Kentucky in Lexington. Thanks for making the trip, Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. I started off this morning in Pikeville, so
Wow.
Whoa.
it's a long way over here.
Yeah.
What do we do to get on the screen?
You just have to hit the, one more button. There we go.
There we go.
Sorry.
I am with the Center for Applied Energy Research at the University of Kentucky. We've got a program with the Center for Applied Energy Research, as well as the Department of Local Government and the Kentucky Energy Cabinet, to help local communities address some energy efficiency issues. These are our partners that are involved in this whole program. We've got area development districts and the League of Cities, as well as CAECO. They're involved in promoting energy efficiency to the local communities. We realize that commercial electric rates are going to go up. They're going to keep going up. Kentucky's still below the national average, but they're going up. And we know that communities don't have resources to basically keep up with that kind of rate increase. We also know that our grant money is diminishing, particularly for energy efficiency and acquiring new equipment that can be more energy efficient. We are working with local communities across the state in a program that's called, or an effort that's called Energy Savings Performance Contracting. And it's a means to finance your facility improvements with new HVAC equipment, new lights, new whatever the city needs as far as energy efficient, maybe dilapidated or kicking the can down the road with deferred maintenance issues, are opportunities to gain energy savings through this performance contracting route. This is a federally recognized effort. It's done all across the country. That's the definition of it through at the DOE level. And here's how this works. For energy savings performance contracting, it's a revenue neutral effort. In other words, you're not having to find more money to pay somebody. You're taking your existing energy budget, which you spend for utilities, for operation and maintenance of the facilities, and you're taking a slice of that pie and you're paying for the improvements through that. It's a guaranteed energy savings program, and I'll get into a little more of that on the next slide, I think. Well, no, first of all, we have reservations, of course. These are very expensive sounding programs. Over a 10 to 15 year period is the time that your energy savings will pay for the project. So it's not a shot of a quick infusion of money. This is a long-term process. It is sticker shock in the fact that when you look at the first cut, there will be high dollars. The local governments, the city, have the opportunity to, and will adjust that. And we'll get into a little bit more of this in a little later on. We've got about $800 million in public projects across the state. This includes state, universities, K through 12, and as well as local government. This is authorized as guaranteed energy savings performance contracting. It's done KRS 45A. And again, the key to this is that it's a guaranteed program that requires RFP for it's a procurement process that's different than low bid, low spec type of RFPs. One of the things that we do, and when I say we, I mean what I do with the energy in my role with the local government retrofit program, is work with local communities to see if they're a good fit, help with the selection of a service, what we call an ESCO, energy service company, that will actually do the work, work with establishing the contract, and help verify that the savings are actually being achieved on a yearly basis. When I say that the energy savings is guaranteed, it's the energy use consumption is the guaranteed part, obviously, because we don't have much control over rates. But when a project is completed, you will receive a guarantee with the energy service company to say you're going to save this X amount, and it's in a dollar figure, but it's based on the rates, and an X amount. And if they, over a year's time, after a year, they do not meet that savings, then they write you a check for the difference, to make up the difference, and then they come in and fix the problem because they don't like to write checks. This is done on an annual basis for as long as the local government wishes to, or until the end of what we call the contract period, which is typically a 15 to 20 year project. And these are the things that local governments are obligated to do with competitive procurement process, working with the ESCOs, and then operate the equipment as has been determined by the ESCOs, by the installers. What I do, again, a little more specific, is we're going through the feasibility of doing a performance contract. We look at utility bills, water data, consumption issues, building comfort, take a whole laundry list of things. We put that into an RFP. I write the RFP, get it approved by the local government, and then the city or the local government is obligated to advertise the proposal, the request for proposal, and then I will also make sure through the Department of Local Government get it sent out to the 8 or so energy service companies that operate in the state. So they all get it at the same time. There's no favoritism or anything like that. You know, they all get it once, so it's not a issue as who's getting it first. And again, these are energy service companies they're private companies. It's a private-public partnership, or public-private partnership, which way you say it. It's working very well across the state. In fact, my next slide, these are projects that have been completed since we've been started this program with the local government, or the Department of Local Government. Maysville is probably the quickest one, or not the quickest one, but the most recent one that's been completed. Mason County, they went into a joint RFP, and we did a joint project with them, with Maysville and Mason, and both of those have been completed. McCracken County has just wrapped up its program. I've talked to the judge probably last time I was in the area about a month ago, and he seems to be very satisfied with results of that. We've not gotten into
courthouse, right?
The HVAC?
Courthouse,
Yeah.
courthouse, the jail, and some of the ancillary buildings. I think the Court of Appeal, or not, Sheriff's Office, and some other facilities. I can't. The EMS center out there by the Hampton Coleman Road.
Coleman Road.
Yeah. The City of Greenville has just kicked theirs off, and Owen County has just kicked theirs off. On my way from Pikeville this morning, I stopped and we had a meeting in Harlan, and that project is getting not kicked off yet, but they're still making it in the negotiation process. We're working with Floyd and Warren counties as well as the City of Prestonsburg. It's another joint RFP that we issued. As we proceed, as I mentioned earlier, I need utility data to kind of go through that, just to check the bill, not check for correctness or anything, but just get an idea how much your utility spend is. And then the other issue is we work with you as you want. We get out of the way if you want. If you don't want us, we leave. I'm here to help. That's what I do, and we think it's a good project to consider. There's some websites. I guess you all can get a paper copy of this somehow with the websites on it. The DLG website is got about a 6-minute video where it talks with local officials that have gone through the process. I think Judge Leeper is in that one. The CAR video has just been released. It's on UK now. It was released a couple of weeks ago. It's just dealing mainly with how UK works with local governments on this. The Building Better Building Solution Center, it gives you ideas on it's a DOE site, and then the Energy Service Coalition, which is the organization of all the ESCOs. It's a national organization that has a lot of useful information on it. And then we have the Kentucky Energy Service Coalition, which is obviously a part of the national program. We have time for questions.
So basically,
It's a 30. I know this is a 30,000 foot
see,
level.
it's very loud. Sorry.
But
So basically, you keep your energy budget the same, and you use the savings to pay off the debt from
Yes, ma'am.
putting in the new systems.
yes, ma'am.
And if I recall correctly, then this actually does not go against your bonding capacity. Is that what
It
you
is
were
actually
saying?
considered revenue by the state, and it does not go against your debt capacity. Yes, sir. And is there another
I would
question?
say, so typically, once it's paid off in that 10 to 15-year cycle, then I presume then the saving, hopefully then the equipment lasts a bit longer, so you actually enjoy a
Yes, sir.
savings.
Yes, sir.
Typically, hard to say.
20 years.
So one of the questions, so Hershaw Train,
Yes, sir.
how are they similar or different than?
How are they, what?
How are they anything like what you do?
Well, they're an energy service company. They would be possibly one of the responding companies to come in and do the
work.
project if they
Okay,
get selected. What I do, again, my services are free. I'm paid through the Department of Local Government and Energy Cabinet. And what I do is I'll draft the RFP. I will attend the work. There's a mandatory walkthrough that's required, just like in any other pre-bid meeting, where if the company does not attend that walkthrough, then they don't get to make a proposal. We give them typically 6 weeks for them to come back down. They will schedule visits on their own time at their own pace to evaluate facilities, take data, collect data, and then after 6 weeks or whatever date we select, they will have to submit their proposal. All this is free. There is no charge for any of this. Then free's a good number. And then after the proposals come in, I'll be happy to come go over them with you. You might want to I suggest you set up a review committee to go over them, and then we'll make recommendations from there. We encourage inviting the top select, whoever, however many we get, we can invite them all in at different times and interview them, or we can pick the top 2 or 3 we want to talk to and invite them in to make a presentation and kind of get more feeling on who you want to work with. At the end of all that, you're still not obligated to do anything. After making a selection of an ESCO, you're just starting to negotiations. You're not bound by what they submitted in the proposal. It's a good idea, and we're all inclusive in the proposal submittal, because it's easier to weed things out than to bring them in later as far as facilities go. And that's what's so I guess encompassing about all this is you get a lot of information up front, and then you get the opportunity to weed it down through your negotiation process with the ESCO that you select. At the end of the day, you will select an ESCO, and you'll approve us, or the scope of work will have to be approved. Even at that point, you can still back out of the whole deal if you decide you don't want to, or you can still negotiate. Really only until the mayor signs on the dotted line are you obligated to start the project. Even then, there was opportunities to continue to weed out different projects or processes and finding the finance. A couple of things that's unique about this program is in addition to the guaranteed energy savings, and you've got 15 years or so to pay for it. Typically, depending on how the rates or the bond is structured or the loan is structured, you have an opportunity to collect a year's worth of energy or savings before you make the first payment on the debt. Again, this does not account against the debt capacity through KLC or DLG or whoever you have bonds with. We typically see bonds, we see local banks. Now, the local banks may have a different attitude about that year free money, but through KCO or KLC, they will basically write the program to where it's through RSA, Ross St. Clair, or Compass, whoever you choose, will write it where you get a year's worth of energy savings before you need to make the first payment.
I had a question about on the other end to Commissioner Rhodes' question. Have you seen any of these structured where you are guaranteed the savings after the loan is paid down or the lifetime of the equipment? Do those match up? Like the warranty on the lifetime and the time of the loan being paid off?
It's actually it states it in the statute that the program cannot go beyond the useful life of the equipment. So there is a sort of an end date, and that's why we recommend we recommend cash flow sheets at a 15-year payback and a 20-year payback, and then local governments get the opportunity to negotiate that. Say you want to do it in 12 years. You know, it's wide open. This is your program. We're just here, and the energy service companies are here to help you save on your energy, and as well as help acquire new equipment.
So the real cash savings are probably not as large as they seem because you're using your savings to pay for equipment. Now, the argument can be made you need equipment anyway,
right.
Therefore, this is the way to get it paid for.
Right. The capital cost avoidance.
But that's the real benefit, probably.
What we
over
have
and
found,
above the.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say over and above any real cash that you're going to see from the savings in the future.
One of the things that we've seen and what these energy service companies tell you is they're very conservative in their estimates of how much energy you're going to save, because they don't want to be on the hook for writing. So they basically lowball the potential savings or the savings. We have found through both the Mason-Maysville project we've had their turnover. We haven't done their M&V yet, but the initial thoughts are it's been very, very positive right now. I think the county judge said says in the video that their savings started almost immediately, particularly when you're dealing with lighting. I talked to the Greenup County jailer. They completed their project, and he almost smiled, which is a very scary thing for a jailer to do. And the fact that he's saying his energy bills are a third from lower than what they were before. Now, all this takes into fact weather and some of the other issues, but overall, we've had very great success from all these projects. I'm not aware that any of the SOs have written a makeup check. In fact, there have been a couple of ESCOs that have had, I know one in particular, in one project where they had to replace the same boiler 3 times, and they ate the labor on that. One of the neat aspect about these projects is once you sign the contract, there are no more changes. There are no changes. There's no change orders. If they miss something in their analysis and they've got to fix it to complete the project, it's on them. And that has happened.
As it though.
My other question was, we missed the boat on the City Hall work, I think, that's happening right now.
Not 100%, I don't think. But
We had that conversation, I think, when we met the first time. Do we know for sure about that yet?
Well, your current project here is not involved. Is lighting involved in that?
Not lighting,
Okay.
but HVAC.
yes, the HVAC.
HVAC is probably outside the
We
realm
missed the
of-
boat, okay, yeah.
Lighting can be done for this building, and again, it'd be changing everything over to LED. The benefits to LED and the fact that the prices come way down is you've got 5 to 10 years without having to replace a bulb. I mean, that's how good they are now. They last that long. You don't have equipment in the way like ballasts and stuff. You just direct wire them in to the electric panel, to the wires, so you don't have to have, there's no intermediary process in there, so you don't have that potential failing. And you're saving money on your operation and your maintenance because you're not having to change light bulbs.
Any other questions?
I will say that as we're talking about our facilities, we're talking about each one of the buildings that we own and ones, that sort of thing. We've also talked about that this could go to any of even the park street lights that we have that are ours, not Paducah Power's, athletic field lighting, all of those, because what's out there today is so much of an energy saver over what we're actually using and the age of ours. So there's a lot of different savings. We've talked water, we've talked gas, all of those types of things for each one of these. And we've met with Greg a couple of times on this so far.
Well, there's a lot of, we got a big house.
Yes.
And there's a lot of rooms in the house, and those funds you don't see, but they're costing the organization. So I think a few years ago we talked about an energy assessment, moved a little bit on it, but obviously with what the numbers are looking like now, to revisit that, I think it's something worth talking about.
Well, and one of the things that's available through this program is you can do the project in phases. In other words, take a low-hanging fruit first, or the biggest issues first, and then phase 2 could be something that, and in that time things are going to go bad anyway. So it just depends on the life expectancy of your equipment, what you got left in it. These companies put in new equipment, but they will also refurbish. Say you've got a system that's 10 years old. It's probably okay for a while. They will rehab it, and get it back up to efficiency, and not have to replace the whole thing. So there are economies of scale, and that's what we like to do is get as much economy of scale from these projects as we can, because that's what pays for them.
And as he said, we could change the scope as we go. If we decide that a building's not one that we're keeping, or we're doing something else with it, then we can adjust that scope.
Yes, sir. They're all very flexible.
It's an interesting process.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it a lot. I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
You have a question. Absolutely. By all means.
Not to throw anybody under the bus, but I mean, what
Next step
next step?
Yeah.
is we'll be back in my category, or in my front court. So
we're going under the bus
it'll be
together. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Could be. I'll be back in touch with you. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the business. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the board member so requests. Anyone have anything they need to take off the consent agenda tonight? No? All right. At this time, we will ask Ms. Pam Spencer to read the items recommended for approval.
Minutes for the April 10 and April 17, 2018 City Commission meetings. Appointment of Ari Jersey to the Board of Ethics to replace Marlene Anderson, whose term has expired. This term will expire February 10th, 2020. Appointment of Eve Silverstein and Dan Patterson to the Human Rights Commission to fill the unexpired terms of Andrew Wiggins and Sam Bussey, who have resigned. These terms will expire February 14th and August 22nd, 2020, respectively. The received and filed documents, personnel actions, and the following municipal orders. Amending Section C, Information Technology of the fiscal year 2017-2018 position and pay schedule for the full-time employees of the City of Paducah to abolish the network technician position and create the position of IT Specialist 1. Adopting an amendment to the fiscal year 2017-2018 pay grade schedule for the employees of the City of Paducah. Authorizing the mayor to execute a legal services agreement with Bryant Law Center and Friedman, Dazio, Zulanis, and Bowling for legal representation in the pursuit of damages incurred as a result of the illegal sale, distribution, and marketing of opioids and opioid derivative drugs in the city of Paducah. Adopting City of Paducah Administrative Plan for 2018 Housing Choice Voucher Program effective May 1st, 2018, with said administrative plan including revisions to the utility allowances for the Section 8 housing program as required by the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as revised. Authorizing the mayor to execute a grant application through the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security for funds in the amount of $10,000 for structural firefighting gear, boots, and gloves for the Paducah Fire Department. And authorizing the mayor to execute a grant application through the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security for funds in the amount of $105,000 for bomb suits for the Paducah Police Department Bomb Squad.
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. And if you'll call the roll, please.
Who seconded?
Everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Rhodes.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. Commissioner Abraham.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a termination of easement with Western Kentucky Regional Mental Health and Mental Rehabilitation Advisory Board, Inc., DBA Four Rivers Behavioral Health for a parking lot area located on the south side of Jefferson Street between North 4th and North 5th Streets. This ordinance is summarized as follows: that the City of Paducah does hereby authorize the mayor to execute and termination of easement with West Kentucky Regional Mental Health and Mental Retardation Advisory Board, Inc., DBA Four Rivers Behavioral Health for a parking lot area located on the south side of Jefferson Street between North 4th and North 5th Streets.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. Commissioner Holland.
I move that the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paducah adopt an ordinance entitled an ordinance authorizing and approving 5 amendment agreements which supplement the professional consulting agreement that was made with Federal Engineering, Inc. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance approves 5 amendment agreements which supplement the professional consulting agreement that was executed between the City and Federal Engineering, Inc. on August 18, 2016, all of which relate to the planning, design, and implementation of the city's upgraded 911 system.
Second.
I know we've had some questions on this, so I wanted to bring Ed McManus, who's back off of
Welcome.
Surgery, and Stephen Chino to give you a little bit deeper information on this action.
You're getting around good on that thing.
I have fallen off a couple times.
Oh.
I'm modest, but I keep forgetting to set the brakes. But thank you, and thanks for letting us present it to all of you tonight. We're here, and we want to make sure that if you have any questions, that we thoroughly address those for you. As we've discussed many times, a tremendous amount of work has gone into us arriving to the point where we are. And in the amendments, the biggest one, number 6, that probably seems to be the one that catches the most attention. That's an implementation agreement, and a tremendous amount of due diligence went into that. We met, of course, many times over many months, and encompassed in that pairs with the CAD contract. There's 8,000 library items. When I say library item, I mean one single item has to be addressed. And that took us months to do, and we got that down to 5,175 functional element items that will make up our CAD. Okay. And that amendment brings Federal Engineering to the table from a different perspective. They have a subcontractor that comes with them, and that's all this gentleman does. And it's kind of like our inspection department. Our CAD has to be created. It's not just out of the box. And so from the day one, when they start writing the code and creating the interface ability, they will be there as well. It's kind of like building a building, and inspection department comes in, make sure the right shingles are used, it doesn't leak, the right gauge of wiring was used, same thing. And that, I'll let Steve, if he chooses to speak above that level of about that level of expertise. This is an animal that hopefully we won't have to take on for 20 more years, but it's I'll let him tell him how far above his level of expertise it is.
Yeah, I've had some questions over the last few days about the functionality that is being addressed with that amendment. There are a lot of things that happen in that step that we are comfortable to an extent, and having federal engineering on board gives us that extra comfort level. These guys do hundreds of these implementations. We do one. We have one chance to get it right, and we know what our limitations are. And so that's, like Ed said, we started out with many, many line items that we whittled down, went through with federal engineering to say, these are the things we have to have, these are the things we can cast to the side. And in our initial rounds, I think have done a tremendous job of getting us to the point we are now. And there are those things that I can say, I don't know. And, part of not knowing is knowing who to call and say, is this the route we need to be going down? We see that already with our large ERP contract that we're doing with Tyler Munis on the Munis side. There are things that we run into even now that we have to reach out to other people, and sometimes that does require additional contracts, just like this. And that's something that, like Ed said, a lot of man hours have been into, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that we are being good stewards and making sure those needs are addressed and answered, and doing that with cost in mind and time in mind, because both of those things, are foremost. And then third being resources that we have in-house that we can throw at that. And so that's the big takeaway for that Amendment 6, is that for me it's a help me sleep at night thing, because I know there's other people that are looking at those things along with me that will help with the project management aspect of that, with the time management of that, and making sure that we're meeting milestones and hitting milestones. As you guys know, as we're reading amendments tonight, we're not fully staffed right now in IT, and so we don't have all those resources to throw at it at this moment. So that's one of the factors that played into this whenever we got to that point. Do we have enough men or women to throw into the mix to make sure that we get that taken care of to an extent? And so this portion of that will help us get to that point. And I hope that's a good explanation of why all the players that were involved, and that's not even the final number that we got. I mean, the first number we got. We started from here, and after whittling down, saying we don't need this service, we don't need this service, got to where we're at now. And so after reviewing my notes and going back, that was a number that was probably 75% higher than what we had ended up with. So we did due diligence on that part also, going through and saying we don't want this service or we don't need that service. And that's how we got to where we're at today. So.
Yeah, and just to put this into perspective, I remember Cliff Brown from Federal Engineering, who was assigned to us. I asked him when I first came on board, they were in town, and I said, explain this to me. Explain how broad this is. And how many work for your firm? He said, there are 55 engineers on staff. I said, how many projects does each engineer carry? He said, they each carry about 10. Himself, he has 10 clients, just like Paducah, bigger or smaller. And something else I want to add, a couple things. This is a time and material amendment. We may not use all of the money allocated, but this is where they believe the ceiling is. And we met, they came to town, and we brought Tom Kohler from KKHB, who did all of our contract review. We sat at the table for several hours, and we went through all of the CAD contracts, we went through all of the amendments, and Tom himself had a very thorough understanding. I think his mind was a little numb when he left. So, we vetted this thoroughly before we brought it to you, and tapped every front possible so we all had the best understanding of what we needed versus what we wanted. How do we make it work, and what's the cost?
Any questions, comments, questions? Thank you for coming tonight and making it more clear. We really appreciate that
No,
a lot.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a huge animal, and to be able to even understand, small parts of it are mind-numbing hours for us most of the time, because, there are things you do once every 20 years. And so.
We just don't want the animal to bite us later.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Hope you get to feeling better.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Commissioner Rhodes.
All right.
Would you like for me to call the roll?
Oh, would you please? Thank you, Pam.
Commissioner Abraham.
Aye.
Commissioner Holland.
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. Now, Commissioner Rhodes.
Yes, ma'am. On a more simple note, I move the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a change order number 1, change order number 2, change order number 3, and change order number 4 for the Pat and Jim Brockenborough Rotary Health Park Project Phase 1. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The mayor is hereby authorized to execute change order number 1, 2, and 4 in the combined amount of $560.93 with Wilkin Construction Incorporated for additional items that are in excess of the original contract for the Pat and Jim Brockenborough Rotary Health Park Phase 1, which will change the total contract to $619,730.29. Further, the mayor is authorized to execute change order number 3, which increases the contract time of completion by 52 days.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? No? Roll call.
Commissioner Abraham.
Aye.
Commissioner Holland.
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. Okay, we're going to actually spend some time on the strategic plan tonight. Since last meeting, we had been here for a while, and I think we needed a brain break. So I hope you've had a chance to look this over a little bit. Pam is going to put this up on the screen so that our audience can see. This has been available on the website also for 2 weeks, so I hope that some people have had a chance to look at that. Before we jump in, I want to kind of give a little bit of a landscape of what we're going to accomplish tonight. This is just a discussion. I want to make sure that's clear, but I also want to hear any changes or feedback that you have, because Mark and Michelle Smolin have been working very diligently on creating the next phase of the strategic plan, which are these really large spreadsheets that actually allow the staff to dive into. Actually, I'll pass this around. They allow the staff to dive into what these objectives mean, and they allow the staff to really have their input on what are these X's that you saw in these objectives, and what can really be accomplished and how that can be accomplished. I imagine that after that review, there might be some things that the staff says, you know what, this isn't even feasible. We might not need to do this, or they'll say, you know what, we're already doing that, and this will be quicker than we thought. So that's really the goal. What I'd like to get to this evening is your feedback, and then May 8th at our next meeting, I would like to make a motion for a municipal order that we approve the key performance areas with these objectives, so that the staff then has our directive to go spend a couple months in the weeds and helping figure out how we're actually going to accomplish the things that are in this plan. So that's what I'd like to get to today. You obviously will have until maybe the week before May 8th to give more feedback as you think about it after tonight. So
wait, and the May, what will we be approving down to the by such and such, this percentage of what should such and such? No.
Not the details.
Just the level up, the performance areas.
Yep.
Okay.
The key performance areas and the objectives, as they're stated. So the actual date and the actual metric is, I think, going to be negotiable, and let the staff take their chance at that first.
So that won't be in the ordinance necessarily?
It will not be, no. Okay. It'll have attachment to this thing that's on the online, just so that there's a reference point.
Okay.
Is that making sense to everyone?
So you're talking about these key performance areas, like develop healthy and sustainable neighborhoods, but it's,
and then
when
the
you talk about
objectives underneath
are you talking about empowerment, sustainability, healthy?
No, the actual
housing?
statement.
You're talking about the actual statement?
Yep.
So you really do have date and percentages in there.
But we don't have dates because they're all X'd out. The staff will decide on the dates.
So we will pass an ordinance with the blanks?
We're passing an ordinance with a general a directive.
Okay.
That says this is the general direction that we want to see us go based on all the work we've done over the last 9 months to a year. And then the staff will take this. Am I explaining this correctly?
So maybe what you're saying, though, it will say
So that date is like floating. It's not.
Right.
Well, it would say
yeah.
City and Energy, the City of Paducah will establish a fund and asset management plan, but we would leave this stuff out of the ordinance because they would fill in those.
The X's would be left out of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like they'd be kind of rephrased a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
It would be the by whatever section.
They can be, yeah. Are we clear? Are we crystal clear? Are you sure? If you're not, tell me.
Well, for now, for discussion, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks, okay. All right, so let's just dive in. I mentioned at this last meeting that the vision statement as written is something that we as the commission, I think, need to land on. The mission and values driven, the values piece of this is something that Michelle and Mark and I have discussed that really we think needs to be staff level direction because they're really the people living this day in and day out. We can give kind of an overview, I think, once they decide on those things in a final passage, but I put that under construction on here on purpose so that we don't feel obligated to make a decision on that tonight. So we'll come back to the vision statement. I think it's easier to think about the vision after we've gone through some of these goals and objectives. So let's skip to, I think I mentioned this last time. If you recall, at our strategic planning session that we spent a couple days together back in November, these key performance areas were the key performance areas that came out of that report from the consultant we hired to come in. We did not put safety, public safety, in there as an explicit key performance area. At the meeting, if you remember, we talked about it being under the Outstanding City Services title. But as I was in the community and as I worked with the staff, we realized that it could very easily become something we took for granted because we do feel like we have such a strong fire and police and public safety program now. So I put this in here just to make sure our awareness was always there. Perhaps as the staff go through this, there might be objectives that get created under this, but this is the one key performance area that I did not create those objectives, but I also wanted to make sure it stayed on our awareness and we didn't forget about it. So that's what that is.
I just have something to say.
Please, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it would be neat to have, if the police department and the fire department have their own objectives that we could put into the strategic plan so we know we're all on the same page. And I also reviewed some of the sidewalk plans today, the last City of Paducah pedestrian plan, and it just struck me how much sidewalks are a part of public safety beyond some of the other measurements we mentioned, and I think there's a chance that belongs under that metric as well.
Also, we mentioned 911.
Ah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
Great. Okay. Are we comfortable with those three kind of high-level areas being the general direction for now, and let the staff take a look at that and help come up with the actual objectives under these three: police and fire operations, sidewalks, and 911?
Maybe infrastructure instead of just specific to sidewalks?
Yeah, I think it could be like crosswalks. I think are probably the key public safety aspect of that.
Infrastructure that specifically has
safety component, like crosswalks or traffic intersections, stuff like that.
Any feedback on that?
So we're with fire, police, and 911. So when you talk about staff level, we're talking bringing those guys, letting them guys look at what's proposed to see if that's, are they hitting it, are they below it, or are they over? Or like you said, we're doing that already. Is that what you're saying with you?
Well, I think because we don't have specific objectives in this key performance area, like we do the rest, that we give guidance for the staff to tell us what their objectives are now. Police and fire, infrastructure as it relates to public safety, and then 911. Right. And then we can come back and review that once they bring it to us. Okay. Yeah. Is that okay for everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Okay, the next one is develop healthy and sustainable neighborhoods. If you recall, we had a lot of items under this during our strategic planning session. I did, as I've told all of you that I would do, met with the staff on several of these items. We also went out into the community and heard a lot of feedback. So what you're seeing here is kind of a mashup of everything we talked about during our strategic planning session last fall and what I heard from the community. So I am going to take a moment to go one by one. If you have an issue or a question with one of them, will you just stop me? that'd be a great way to do that, I think. All right. By a certain date that the staff will help us determine, 50% of neighborhoods in Paducah will be taking on some kind of enhancement project. By a certain date, one neighborhood or district will develop a community development corporation.
I have a question on that one.
Yeah.
So would that have to be developed by a neighborhood, or is that something that the city could develop?
That's a Tamara question. That's okay, Tamara. I'll take a stab at it if you don't want to come up here.
It's just a thought for a community development corporation. Does it have to be developed by a specific neighborhood in the city, or is that something the city can establish?
A community development corporation is its own entity, and it has to meet, in the state of Kentucky, it has to meet certain criteria and be so blessed by the state of Kentucky. And so what that directive tells me is that we will be working with neighborhood people to develop a CDC together. It's a joint kind of thing.
Just for that specific neighborhood?
CDCs are, by their nature, one of the key things is they have to define a geographic area that they're going to be working in.
That's the key word, then, a geographic
Yes.
area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now keep in mind that this says 1. It could say 10, and the date could be 20 years out, because, right? But the idea is that multiple community development corporations could form. Once one gets off the ground, other people in our community could say, hey, that's a really great model. I want to do it also, and start to formulate those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are more specific. I just wanted that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Next one is, by a certain date, 6 neighborhood organizations will increase their capacity or skill set for developing, for planning and project implementation.
So you're talking about the neighborhood, the neighbors?
Yes. Neighborhood associations, or even the CDC, whatever form that takes on, that there will be opportunities for capacity building for them. The next one is, by a certain date, increase Paducah's tree canopy by 10%. And again, when you look at this spreadsheet that I just showed you that Michelle and Mark have formulated, the staff will also have to figure out how to determine our baseline. Because if you're increasing something by 10%, you have to have a baseline by which to judge that by. So that will be part of the activity that is created by the staff, is how do we come up with the collection of that baseline. The next one is, by a certain date, all neighborhoods will develop an asset map, vision board, and establish a plan for vacant properties and redevelopment. By a certain date, 70% of Paducah's neighborhoods will be connected via sidewalks and/or bike lanes. By a certain percent, 16% more citizens will live within half a mile of access to healthy foods. By a certain date, 80% of residents will be within a 10-minute walk to a park.
Okay, I'm just going to...
Yeah, go ahead, please, yeah.
So when you say 60% of citizens will live within half mile of access to healthy foods, that one's still one that can be altered and
there's a lot of
looked at,
fleshing out
because
on that. We've already discussed that.
How do you describe healthy foods? What's the identification for that?
Yep.
And how do you know what markets are within a half mile of the, you know what I mean? I mean,
to me, you could increase farmers market or some other things like that, as opposed to living within a half a mile.
An example of that was doing some midweek farmers markets in different neighborhoods and that sort of thing, on different areas beyond just parks, possibly. That there's some options with that. So it does need some fleshing out.
Okay.
That's one I would encourage to make some changes to.
So make some changes to before you're comfortable giving the general directive? If that's the case, we probably need to talk about that.
I don't understand it yet. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I see it, and it sounds good. It's kind of floating around like the date right now, you know. And by a certain date, 60%. Okay, that's going to be kind of challenging to bring that to fruition. So,
Rich, are you kind of what I kind of thought about? I thought, Jimmy Chris, Save-A-Lot bails out from Broadway on kind of a midtown location. So how will we accomplish this? I mean, that's kind of when I first read that. That was my initial kickoff from there, and then I was on to Mark and Brandon. And okay, so a neighborhood farmers market, they could maybe kind of rotate around.
It's not that
yeah,
it's not that they're there.
That sounds sounds great.
Then maybe it should be an increased access to healthy food instead of defining that the mile radius.
I think a half a mile is very.
Yeah, maybe it's 60%, or by such and such date, we increase access for 70% of Paducah citizens to healthy food. Increase access to healthy foods for 60% of Paducah citizens, so that we make sure that because that's easier for us to control. So we're saying, well, instead of half mile to access it, we're saying they had they were so far away from the farmers market, and now they have increased access because they have a monthly, bi-monthly, whatever farmers market in their neighborhood.
Okay. Or even more areas to grow their own gardens or those kind of things.
Yeah, community gardens,
community gardens in more parks throughout the city. So I think that one.
You guys are doing the staff's job. You're brainstorming. I like it.
Well, I know, but the half mile is probably the holdup for me.
Okay. So then, to let up a little bit, this might be a citizen survey capture, not this year, Pam, unless maybe we could. But this might be a way to do that. Is it's more self-reported information that we're looking for. The citizens are self-reporting that we have access, not that we're measuring a half mile. Is that what
it could be like, do you have the capacity to grow your own food? Do you have access to a garden plot? Do you have access to a farmer's market? Do you live? And then you could define the mileage from fresh produce. Do you live within 5 miles of a grocery store that sells fresh produce? I mean, I don't think we have a huge problem with food ghettos in Paducah, but increased access.
We have a significant food desert in Paducah.
We do?
Yeah. I will say, from the perspective of that I didn't make this objective up on my own, that this was actually in a standardized publication around access to healthy foods, because we are a food desert, that this is a metric that communities use to determine whether or not they've made impact on this. Because being a little bit loose about it, do you have access to healthy food? Most people are going to say yes to that question because it's not detailed enough to really catch what's really going on.
Well, then maybe what we need to know is how you define a food desert.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Okay.
What does that mean?
There's a few definitions, but it does have a component of how close do you live? How easy is it to actually walk out your front door and access healthy foods? There's a program in Seattle, actually it's in Washington State and more rural areas, where they do like corner store programs, and there's a program that actually helps grow the produce and then take it to corner stores so that corner stores can sell healthy fruits and vegetables to the people who typically buy from corner stores. So that's an example of an intervention that happens here. I am happy. What if we just put develop a healthy food metric?
Yeah, maybe that's our
How about that? How about we just give a directive so the staff can figure this out? And are you comfortable with that, Commissioner Abraham?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to mark this all out and say something around access to healthy foods. Okay, the next one was the 10-minute walk to the park. Anyone have any? This was actually a formal program that we applied for recently, and it was an initiative where they actually helped do audits, walking audits of, do people have access to a park within 10 minutes? We didn't get the grant. It was a planning grant, but it was such an interesting idea that there was a lot of suggestion on putting that in here as a metric for us. We do get access to the technical assistance, I think, to do the work on that.
Could I be the volunteer that does the walk?
Absolutely.
There's no painting involved. Are you sure you still want to do it?
No. I'm not going to saunter. I'm going to walk. With purpose.
Anything that you all feel that we're missing on here that you wish was on here that's not around neighborhoods? No? Okay. All right. The next one is maintain thoughtful and modern infrastructure.
You did skip over housing.
Sorry.
Yeah, the last one.
Oh, thank you. This is still a pretty generic one to be fleshed out, but by a certain date, 20% more housing options will be mixed income. This again was a metric that I think I pulled it. I don't know if Tamara sent it to me or not, around housing options. This has a lot to be fleshed out, but the idea is there's been a lot of talk in our community that we need more mid-income housing, and this captures a tenement of that a little bit, unless you all want to be more specific than this.
So is that something that you negotiate with a developer?
I think that could be. It could also be a zoning conversation. I think Tamara's coming up to give us some thoughts on this.
I apologize. I don't know if this is appropriate or not. If not, I'll just walk back to my...
It's very appropriate. Please, please.
But might I suggest, instead of saying, instead of going after will be a mixed income, how about if we just say that by a certain date, we will have 20% more housing options? Because when you get into asking people about their income, that's really personal. And also, a lot of times size will dictate affordability, but not always. And so I think options is a really important thing, because right now we don't have many options in Paducah itself. Many of the options are either outside or unattractive.
Was that something in the Forward Paducah plan too, about, I have to look back to it, on affordable
the
housing?
middle range? I think it was in there.
Millennials or
Is that because you have developers not building those types of structures, or personally, I don't have the resources to access that, if it is an option?
A lot of times it's both. It's easy to do what you've always done, and it becomes a habit, and you get efficiencies with that. Change causes you a little uncomfortableness, but change also costs money. You have to change your plans. You have, you got to adjust and everything like that. So it is a reticent for builders to do the way they always have done it, and the past is an encourager of that because it always worked. But what is happening is that the population is changing, and not you don't have the majority of the population wanting the same housing product. Now we have different segments wanting different products, and it's not all what it used to be, which is the detached single-family house with 3-4 bedrooms. So there's that element, but then there's also the element of can a person afford it?
Right.
And that you attack at a different, that's why I kind of wanted to stay away from mixed income, because that's a different attack mode in terms of how you address that, in terms of economic development and things like that.
So if you changed it to just have more housing options, is 20% low? Or is that have 20% more housing options?
Okay, since I'm already out here on this limb, I'm going to go all the way to the edge.
So where is it?
That's the question that they have to really figure out. Yeah.
Exactly. On a lot of these, maybe it might serve us well if we kind of have a two-prong standard. Say, by this date, we will establish what our existing status is, and then by 2, 5, 1 year later, we will improve it by X%. I mean, because a lot of these things we don't know exactly where we are, and it takes.
Well, I think that's true of many of these. When
Yes,
you talked about
exactly.
the tree canopy, we've got to understand what the baseline is and then how we can increase it.
Yes.
And just so you're aware, just hold on one second, just so you're aware, that was the thought in these spreadsheets. There's a next steps section, and most of these, the next steps are going to be figure out how to collect data on the baseline.
Okay.
I don't know that we need to be as prescriptive to say that all that data needs to be understood within a year, 2 years, or 3 years. I think that's a staff decision. So I think at our level, we need to stay out there with the goal in mind, and you guys at the staff can figure out what do we need to do to figure out how to collect this. Again, if you get in there and you realize this isn't even possible to collect, the way this is written, it's not doable, that's a discussion that we need to have once you've had time to do that. But my goal here was just to give a general direction and saying this is where we're going to head, so that we're clear and we're all working on the same thing. Well, so are you comfortable with, should we do an X percentage on this one, since it's a little unknown, and let you and the team work out what this actual percentage should look like? The more housing options part? And
well,
not even
that's a value judgment. I like the fact that you are putting numbers to this, because it tells us how far and hard you want us to push at on any given topic.
So should we keep it at 20 and let it be that for now, and if it changes, it changes?
Well, you have 20% more, so that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's good.
I just think it's going to be kind of interesting figuring out how much of this that we actually control. You know, that's going to be I would think important with this, because some of this as we go through it, and I'm thinking when you talk about neighborhoods, when you talk about neighborhoods and being motivated to do things within your neighborhood, that's an individual taking the initiative to do something possibly that they haven't done before. So we put this together. We'll control some of it, but the way this looks is that it's people driven,
which is our community,
which we don't control. So I guess we could put some things together to motivate, empower, and see how that works.
Absolutely. If you can imagine some potential objectives that would have been put in place for the Lower Town Neighborhood Association, you can imagine that they would have looked something like this. I don't know that was done. The other piece of this story is that these are called objectives, not mandates, and that when you set objectives, you're setting a general direction. It gives you an opportunity to build milestones towards that direction, so that at any moment the staff can come to the City Commission and say, we're not hitting this milestone. Here are the reasons why. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough staff. We don't have the technical expertise in-house. And so then we're truly problem solving for the goal, rather than hoping something's going to happen and then it not. So it just gives us that deliberate mechanism by which we can understand. It is not meant for this City Commission to say to the staff, shame on you because you didn't get there. It's meant to be a communication tool that we can help measure what we're doing. This is a private industry approach. I will admit that. I've seen some cities do this, and so it is a little step out of our comfort zone, I think, the way we typically do it. But from my perspective and the burden that I feel that we have to hold ourselves accountable in spending taxpayer dollars, this is a smart way to hold ourselves accountable and making sure that we're accomplishing things and not just talking about them. Okay, so for now, if everyone's okay, unless you change your mind between now and May 8th, I have changed this metric or objective to, by a certain date, 20%, there will be 20% more housing options in the city. Okay? Okay. Next up is maintain thoughtful and modern infrastructure. This we talked a lot about during our sessions in November together, and we've had a lot of feedback from the staff and the community on this one. Some of these things are actually already things that the staff have been thinking about. Oh, I realize there's something number 5. Sorry about that. Okay, so let me just run through. Again, stop me if you want to chat about it. By a certain date, the City of Paducah will establish a funded asset management plan. By a certain date, the City of Paducah will downsize its ownership in real estate by a certain percentage. By a certain date, the City of Paducah will achieve energy savings of a certain percentage within 2 to 3 years. By a certain date, the City of Paducah will see a return on investment of energy efficient improvements in city-owned buildings. It shouldn't say within 5 to 7 years. Sorry, that date should be there. I'm just going to take out the within a certain year.
And so the number 5 doesn't go there either.
Right, no, the 5 to 7 doesn't go there. I missed that. By a certain date, the main commercial corridors will be connected for commuting by bike. This one I do want to point out that in the spreadsheet that gets created, we have to identify what commercial corridors are. So that's definitely one of the first steps that the staff would have to do. What are our commercial corridors? How do we label them? How do we talk about them? What are their boundaries? By a certain date, a certain percentage of Paducah street lights will be converted to LED. By a certain date, Paducah's PCI rating, which is Alan, do you want to tell them what it is?
Oh,
It's a pavement condition index. Rating will improve by 20%. This is the one that's already in the works right now. By a certain date, 70% of Paducah's neighborhoods will be connected. You saw this in the neighborhood one also. By a certain date, 100% of Paducah's sidewalks will be ADA compliant. The technology pieces are, I said under construction, but I think we're just going to leave that one out unless anyone has anything specifically. This is underway, obviously, the Munis project, and Tyler has been implementing. So really, that could just say continue on the path and finish it out.
Or see Michelle.
See Michelle.
That's specific to city government, not necessarily technology for the community.
Right. It's supposed to be city government. Okay. Yeah.
I suggest two things. On the sidewalks, I mean, I think that to split them up so it's not duplicated, it might be good in neighborhoods to focus on what they call in the pedestrian plan, please hold, new sidewalk collector networks. So that's the pieces that connect them. Like they rank how important these sections are to connecting. Adding new sidewalks to these places are connector networks. So like the first ranked one is South 21st Street, the next one is Buckner Lane, Sycamore, and Pecan. So they're big connectors. So I mean, I guess it's just just linguistics things, but one could focus on connecting, one could focus on new sidewalks. So upgrading existing sidewalks and then building new sidewalks to connect the neighborhoods, because I think there's, so maybe this is where we want to stop it on, the modern infrastructure might be the existing sidewalks and the neighborhoods are the new connectors. I don't know.
Okay.
But the neighborhoods could also be a part of the system where we provide the labor and they provide the funds to upgrade the sidewalks. That could be a really cool neighborhood thing too. The other thing I'm wondering about the technology, is there anything in here about the city's cybersecurity? Because there should be. Steven?
Sure, come on up. Yeah, since you're here.
I was super freaked out about what happened in Atlanta.
Oh, yes.
And I just think that needs to be on our radar to make sure that we maybe have a plan in place or know that we're updating our security measures, which is probably already built into
absolutely
a lot of our processes. Or you can just, tell me that's not going to happen here. But
no, you don't ever say that. That's how you get it.
I just think that those types of situations are going to become more common.
Sure.
And so, and I think in 2018, a responsible city government has its eye on cybersecurity and technology infrastructure.
No, those are great questions. That was, we got a deluge of email and phone chatter after that Atlanta incident went down. And I can assure you that that's something that's always foremost in our mind. We're constantly looking at our security measures to make sure that they not only meet our standards for data security and protection, but also we've got to meet, so many other standards. Having a fire department, having a police department, having 911, there's a bunch of security measures we have to meet already to be compliant with CJIS and FBI and CIA, all those different data transfers that we do, not just in email, but in file transfers within. There are industry standards and best practices that we follow and are supposed to follow. And if you'll come to me, I can go through those. That's not one of the things that we usually let the public know what our measures are.
No, please don't.
Because that is,
I'm just wondering if there, with regards to the strategic plan, and maybe you can help us think of some good performance metrics, so that, we're not sitting here with the camera systems that are run by several different organizations, and we're trying to figure out how, what do we want the camera system to look like, and what our security camera systems to look like in 5 years, and what do we want to know about our security infrastructure? Is there something we should, instead of having a munis that we have to do every 20 years, is there something, I know if the accounting department was in here, they'd probably throw things at me, but how can we anticipate the next munis, that kind of thing?
Absolutely, and that's something that we do currently now. That was a great example with the cameras. We do have a liaison at the police department that is kind of heading up that program for us. That's been a problem in the past of having multiple systems and making sure
Under
now
different
that,
grants.
That's
and yada,
right.
yada, yada.
That's right. They've been funded by different grants, and so different people are different babysitters, and we're trying to get all those under one umbrella. That's one facet of this.
Well, maybe that could be one. By
And how
such and such
quickly
year,
they
we'll
age.
have cameras
Exactly.
under the one umbrella.
Right, and the metric of how fast do you do it is the first metric, and the second metric of who is going to have access to
Right.
that, and to what extent.
But I mean, those security cameras are a part of our infrastructure now, for sure.
Absolutely.
So are we comfortable? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, just since we're on that, and I don't think, well, I guess you could find it in what we want to do here moving forward. But what about the security of this building? Because it's pretty wide open. You walk through the front door and there you are, and it's so many different places to disappear. And you don't want to talk about it, but we live in some weird times. So I think at some point, we talked about it a few years ago, and nothing really came about it, but you got to start thinking about that.
I had a conversation with our former city manager, and he mentioned that could be part of a later phase of this of the building upgrades. That I think I don't know if it's officially in the plans, but he mentioned that specifically because I was very concerned about that.
So what if I put security in generalized terms, and then when this gets in front of you, then you could take a stab at maybe what that looks like.
Absolutely.
And what those things are.
And that's something
Okay.
I think would be beneficial to you guys too, to actually meet with us and go over what actually happens to a piece of data, from point A to point B, and when it goes through our system, how many different levels it actually has to get through before you can actually see it. So we would be more than happy to have you guys come over or set up a web session or something and show you what we do.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue.
All right, thank y'all.
Is everyone comfortable with that moving forward? Okay. All right. Next up is by a certain date, create a self-sustaining stormwater management and infrastructure operation. So that one's underway.
Just a little one. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is provide open, smart, and engaged government. The first one is by a certain date, city services and programs will have a defined outcome measures, data collection plans, and regular reporting strategies. By a certain date, provide a clearly defined path through Munis to submit and track service requests so the city can measure efficiencies and citizen satisfaction while supporting continuous improvements of services. This is really about how we as commissioners and the citizens access, they call them service requests internally, and how are we tracking those and knowing that they're followed up with and finished and all those kinds of things.
So currently, how are we doing that?
Currently, internally, there is a process. I don't know what that process is internally.
On
the citizen services requests.
Citizen services and requests, basically, I mean, it's handled by each department. They get their call in, they do their best, their work orders that go in,
right,
and that sort of thing. One of the things we are looking at on the in Munis is also going to have the citizens implementation on that of what we're fondly calling TIM, which is the Tyler Interactive, basically, management. And that gives them incident management. We don't like the word incident. But
to actually engage
it's
in
where
what
you can get that, and you're going to get that response back on when things are going to happen and occur. That's one of the things that Munis is going to help us with.
Push your button.
As we go.
Huh?
Push your button.
Oh, sorry. I can cover my mouth or push on, but
right now each department's handling theirs as they go through.
Okay.
The next one is probably the most vague one of all of these because I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't know where we could land on this, honestly. This was a conversation I had in almost every community meeting I had. We had this at our strategic planning session back in the fall, and I landed on keeping this very, very high level. From the staff perspective, I think what the thought was that Munis and Tyler should be providing a lot of efficiencies for the process that our citizens and developers use when they are developing property, getting inspected, all those kinds of things. And there's a lot of business process work that's going on right now in looking at how Munis helps with that. So this is also a little underway, but I would love to hear from you if there are specific things that you want to make sure get in here, or if you want to, again, pass this over to the staff, let them take a look at what might be possible, and then come back to us, and we can be in discussion that way. Does anyone have anything that jumps out? No? Okay. The next one is, by a certain date, Paducah's IT department will help train and facilitate city staff to improve utilization of data, evaluation, planning, collection, analysis, and visualization for communicating to the public. Again, using Stephen and his staff's expertise to help disseminate across the departments. The next one is, by a certain date, citizens will be able to crowdsource information to the city about potholes, broken sidewalks, etc.
I'm sorry, can I stop you real
Yes,
fast?
please. Yeah.
For outstanding services. I wonder if there is a way, I don't know if staff can do this. You know, I just am increasingly, as we look at this list and the word, we keep using the word staff, and staff will do this, and staff will do that, and staff will do that. I wonder if we need like sort of an outside analysis of our staffing levels and where some of our departments might be understaffed or overstaffed or whatever, because so much of our smart, engaged government is about the staff, and it seems like we need to have some sort of metric with regards to the staffing itself. Especially because, like I said, we just keep saying, well, staff will do this, and staff will do that, and staff will do this.
Well, I think that's the point, though, right? That the staff then say, this is not doable with the current budget that we
so
have.
that's sort of built into the pudding of the whole process.
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay.
And as that is part of the development of service levels.
Okay.
Because there may be ways we can do it to this level, but not to
That makes
this level.
sense. That makes sense to me.
And then you have the overall, just that thick storm cloud. Oh yeah, we have this phase in the pension reform for the next 30 years, or how many years. I mean, but
Take
that
a
is a
moment.
reality.
That's a reality, absolutely.
It's a reality.
Yep, that's right.
Well, many of these are multiple steps.
All this plays in, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, next up is, by a certain date, citizens will be able to access service information via an online portal. I think that's your Tim. By a certain date, develop creative, compassionate, and cultural awards, a program to celebrate with community members and employees who are working towards these goals. Go ahead.
Because this might come back to our vision statement. I'm struggling with the difference between creative and cultural.
I think that's a Mary Hammond question.
Okay. You may ask Mary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think culture is more. It's a broader, it's history, it's who we are. Creative is more the forward thinking.
Or you can take that, what you just said, and create something that encompasses that.
Well, that's my struggle, as I feel like creative is encompassed within cultural. So I don't know. But go ahead.
This objective was about giving a chance to put some, I don't want to say, I guess the celebration behind, especially I think internally, but also in the community, of celebrating these goals that we have and the vision statement that we might create for the city. And that's really what this is for. It's about reinforcing, this is the vision that we say we have for our city. Let's celebrate people who are heading in that direction and are doing those things. It's almost like a remaking of the Duchess Award idea. That isn't, it will not take that place at all. But I do struggle with when people want to give awards to community members, that Duchess Award should be one of the highest awards you get. We don't have any other options. Right. And so I think we need more options for celebrating these things with our community. That's really where that came from. The next up is, by a certain date, launch the city's Creative Action Challenge to fund 10 new programs and projects that work towards the initiative goals. So again, to your point, Sarah, or Commissioner Holland, we are asking staff to do a lot of this, but what if we could provide some funding to community organizations to start new projects, or organizations that are already doing things in line with our goals that, again, reinforce, hey, this is the direction we're taking, and we want to support what you're already doing. So just a little bit of a new take. All the details are, of course, to be fleshed out. The next one is that by a certain date, city branding will be consistent across all departments and along with other community organizations that are very forward-facing for us, so CVB, Chamber, PD. This is not about copying and pasting anyone's branding or logo. It's about using some guidelines that we all are in agreement with so that we can all have that same look. If you Google Paducah, you don't see 10 Paducahs. You see everyone is in communication and in line. The last one is something I am just thoroughly enjoying by hosting some interns. I thought a lot of people could enjoy it. By a certain date, host 25 high school and college interns yearly across departments. I have 7, so I got started. Yeah. Okay, anything we're missing in here that you care deeply about? Anything?
I think the business-friendly city is one of the top ones.
Okay. Check. All right, next up, we can get through this. This is enhanced culture, arts and culture and tourism. I did realize after I did this, if you remember, the key performance area was around arts and culture. I don't know how tourism got added to this, but it kind of makes me a little uncomfortable, actually, that we would declare our job as for tourism. I wanted to mention that. I don't know if anyone else cares enough about that to take it off, but I thought, okay, we could keep it enhanced arts and culture, and knowing that we have a third-party agency who has their own funding sources that works towards tourism
and does a great job.
And does a great job, exactly. And we can be a support, of course, and a lot of these things on here are supportive of that. But I just got a little uncomfortable with the term on there. Okay, so by a certain date, launch a creative and cultural council. If you recall, we did a little bit of an activity at the end of our strategic planning session in November. We had little dots, and we went up and showed our preference to certain things. The Creating a Culture Council or Creative Council had, I'm pretty sure, 4 or 5 of our dots up there. So that's why I made it again to here. And then I went ahead and fleshed this out because in several of the community meetings, we did talk in detail about what this council might do. And so I went ahead and put those on here. By a certain date, every commercial corridor and neighborhood will have at least one piece of public art. By a certain date, at least 50 of Paducah's creatives will experience a creative exchange with another creative city.
What do you mean by that?
This was built out of the UNESCO piece.
So what's Paducah's creatives?
That's why it says that, so it can be loosely defined.
Okay.
If you think about when we went to Mexico,
people going
we
on
took
those
chefs, we took ceramicists, musicians.
So you're talking about creative as in people or
like creatives as in like creatives in their industry.
Yeah, I guess I could do.
And actually, some of these are under number 1. Like there's 2 and 3 subs.
Yeah, they should have
1.
been. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I did those in. Okay, number 4 was by a certain date, 50% more Paducah citizens will have visited a creative or cultural destination in the city. So that again is thinking about how do we help to encourage or facilitate, whatever that looks like, more of our citizens getting to experience our own cultural assets that our visitors get to experience. The next one is by a certain date, 10% more people will attend arts and cultural events, programs, and classes. This came out of a conversation I had with several of our arts organizations in thinking about things like transportation being a barrier. And not just transportation, but what other barriers exist. And do we have the opportunity, maybe in IT, to do some data collection through the citizen survey eventually? What kind of opportunities do we have to help understand why the barriers that our community might have to accessing these classes?
I know I work with, we have a new art teacher at Tillman, Mr. Romaine, and he has different pieces of class for extra credit for high school students to come down on a Saturday and take a class at the art school. And he mentioned to me the other day that if you go to Carbondale, I think there may be some opportunities there for folks to go and take an art class, and it's like packed out. And to engage our guys, our high school students, art students, to what we have downtown, is that's a barrier right there. And I see his efforts to gradually tear that down. And it's working. Kids are trickling in there, but I think that's important. We're our community, and we got to get, still, we're trying to get people downtown. And we've been here a long time. We're trying to get folks downtown. So,
well, and some of the arts organizations have in their goals to provide tickets at a reduced price to people who may not be able to pay, or a lot of there's a lot of things that could take place into that.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, number 6 is by a certain date, and art consortium organizations will experience a 5% increase in funding from grants. Now, this is specifically meant to target the group of organizations that we give funding to every year in our investment fund, if you recall. And the idea would be that this cultural council and whoever would be running this council would be a go-to central person who helps to find those funding resources. Right now, we don't really have that. And there are several organizations that give funding nationally, but our one grant writer is having to decide who gets what. And so thinking about someone who can coordinate those efforts, and maybe we write a grant for 2 or 3 organizations to be partners together on those grants. Maybe there's funding sources we haven't found because we don't have the time and energy to find those yet. And so the idea is that this cultural council would be focused on finding those funding opportunities that we might not have been accessing before. This one is around the film industry. I think we're all aware that Kentucky has a pretty aggressive tax incentive. I don't know if it'll live.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought they killed it.
It's been, no, it didn't.
No, I think they put it back in.
Yeah.
Oh, they did.
But
so
it's questionable.
It's questionable.
And it would be very dependent on that.
Yeah, exactly. So this metric, or this objective, is very dependent on the state having their robust tax credit program. And I think we can just be mindful of that as we look at this. The last one is that we would perform periodic surveillance of the state of the arts and culture. This does get done every now and then. I don't think there's a rhyme or reason to when it gets done, but on a local level, being able to understand what our assets are, how they're developing, what they're bringing in, really kind of an economic pulse of what's happening. Also, you know, the only reason I learned that there were barriers to some of our art programs was because I was out in the community asking questions about it. So if we had a regular surveillance program where we were always asking those questions, we could systematically collect that information, prioritize what we think we can do as a city, and then disseminate that information to the community so other people might step in and start solving those problems.
Couldn't our art community, they have I don't know, a group, a board, couldn't they take care of that as far as looking at the state of the arts and culture here in the city? Since,
are you talking about a current board that's already in place?
Well, I'm just looking at number 8 and what you just said about how to have our fingers on what's actually going on, the state of it. I'm pretty sure we could, some of those guys, now some of the artists down there would have a, you know.
They would be on this council, right?
Yeah.
They would be serving on this council that's proposed in order to do that.
I would think.
Yeah. Mr. Rose, did you have?
I guess the word surveillance is throwing me there. I don't. That's kind of heavy.
Yeah. What else would you like to put there?
I don't know. Pick another word.
I don't got one. Observation.
Sure.
Data collection.
Sure.
Okay.
Not cataloging, but where you can't.
Evaluation.
No.
Evaluation?
No.
Assessment?
Assessment. I like assessment.
Yeah, that's basically what you're doing.
Okay, assessment
Assessing,
wins.
evaluating.
All right.
Okay,
Surveillance.
move on over.
Okay, next up.
Tamara got those bonus points.
Okay. Empower upward economic mobility for all. You will see this is broken up into two sections. One for potential ways that we can facilitate this, but then also specifically thinking about outside agencies that we fund whose job is to do this. So let's start with the top. By a certain date, Paducah's riverfront will be fully developed from the Carson Center to the Convention Center. I stole that from Commissioner Wilson.
I do say that a lot, but I'm wondering about if that wouldn't be more under another category. I'm not sure I see it under upward economic mobility for all.
Stop at the mobility for all, just upward economic. I mean, this is just that we're just trying to build the economy, and it will lift everyone along with it.
Well,
I think it's a quality of life piece.
Yeah.
I think it's more quality of life.
Yeah. Okay. I'll actually just designate that here at the top. Okay. By a specific date, all commercial corridors or districts will be identified, branded, beautified, and have a plan for vacant property. So this goes back to that kind of first step of some of the other metrics that you've seen in here. By a certain date, launch Entrepreneur Remote Workers Relocation Program. This directly came out of Ford Paducah. Did all of you get to participate in Ford Paducah during the data collection?
But I've read it.
Okay. This is in there. It was a proposal, and it is a partnership with the city government. It requires us, obviously, to be a partner in this. But it was a proposal that came out of Ford Paducah that basically built off of the Artist Relocation Program and said, hey, you're already really well known for this thing. Why not try something else and be known for another relocation? And what industry or what group of people do you want to target? Entrepreneurs came up, and I added the remote workers because we've been talking a little bit in the community about what remote work means. How do we help facilitate access to remote work?
And what exactly does that mean?
So remote work is working in the city of Paducah, but for a corporation outside of the city.
Okay.
So we have quite a few, actually, people who work for IBM, people who work for technology companies that live in Paducah.
So it'd just be more like actively recruiting them. I mean, I know a couple that just moved here from Atlanta into Fountain Avenue. They both work remote.
And
But they wanted to live in Paducah.
Around that.
So it'd be more of an aggressive plan to relocate them here, similar to the Artist Relocation Program, or at least something like that's what you're saying.
Yep. By a certain date, 90% of downtown buildings will be occupied. I guess we could say 100, but that's a little intimidating.
Well, I know. I still think that's probably a multiple step. I mean, it'd be great to, by such and such date, to get to 75%, and at the next date, get, I don't know what the baseline is, but by then 5 years later, 100, 90%.
Yep. Let's see what the baseline is, because maybe it's 75.
It may be more than we think it is.
Yep.
And I'm sure Tamara can do it.
She looks tired back there. Okay, so this is the next piece that is has a lot to do with Paducah Economic Development, because we do give quite a bit of funding to that organization. Most of these metrics you will see in Ford Paducah, so these are not off the hip. They are already in a plan. I actually also shared this with Judge Leeper, and he and his fiscal court are very interested in having a conversation around metrics as well, so that we have some kind of pulse point on the commission level of what's happening and what metrics that they're meeting there, okay? So by a certain date, Paducah will be known for entrepreneurship and innovation. Again, that's a little bit of a broad statement. It's a value statement. By a certain date, X% of existing businesses will expand. That's a lot of steps. That's actually a full program that gets put in there. But for me, it was just getting all of us to agree that these are the things that we care about from the economic perspective, and that we want to put those into our plan. The next one is by a certain date, 25%, I should say new businesses, permits will be submitted in specific areas. These areas are copied and pasted off of the target clusters out of the Ford Paducah plan. There was a consultant that came in from Texas and did a whole lot of work to figure out what these targets are. So I didn't think we should reinvent the wheel, and we should piggyback off of those.
At least 4 of those also are from the state's plan.
Yeah, good point. Yep.
I can't remember what the 5th one would be. That's not. Creative Industries is not, but I know advanced manufacturing. Healthcare.
Is it hospitality?
Is this no?
Or tourism?
No.
Oh.
Sorry, I can't remember.
No.
Well, engineering. One of them is engineering.
Okay.
For the state.
The next one is by a certain date, 50% more businesses will be enrolled in a business retention and expansion program. This goes back up to number 6, really, that we're looking for expansion here and retaining. By a certain percentage, or by a certain date, all available sites and buildings will be inventoried and kept up to date. By a certain date, 100 people will be enrolled in the Paducah Works program. And that is a program that was identified from both the Impact Poverty Task Force and Ford Paducah Plan. And it is a program that is mimicked out of Cincinnati. And what it does is help lower wage earners to retain their jobs by providing assistance in transportation, childcare, any other reasons why someone might not be able to hang on to one of those jobs. The idea is that the longer they're in those jobs, the more opportunities they have for savings and leveraging out of poverty. So this is a poverty-specific focused program that many of our community have been trying to get off the ground.
So I have one more that might fit in here that we just didn't talk about earlier, but I really wish we could see, because we invest a lot of money in the community college. We invest a lot of money on the 4-year Murray State building here. If there would be a way to add in that, and I feel sure we could get a baseline on how many more people in our community would have achieved their associate's degree, and how many more people that have associate's degree might have achieved their bachelor's degree. Just to kind of a lift up in the education system.
I think the problem is how do we make that happen, right? Do you just want to know, or do you?
Well, I think there are ways that we could. I mean, we're already doing some of it by providing the community scholarship program. We're funding the Murray State building here with the county, but there may be some other things that we could do. Transportation, just things like with Paducah Works. Maybe there are things that, getting the PATS bus to be more accessible around the college time. Some more tuition reimbursement programs that could be identified for, working adults to help them.
I guess if we're supporting outside agencies.
But I think education is one, increasing or improving. We've done a lot to improve education ability or openness here, but how can we encourage people to take advantage of it? Mm-hmm. I think overall, you see where people that have more education make more money. Mm-hmm. So how can we begin to get that in? And maybe there are things with our employers too that we help the associate degree nurse to get her bachelor's degree.
Well, typically in situations like that, the person that has taken advantage of the opportunity are the best ambassadors. Whatever we come up with, add that component in there. Whether you get in front of a group of people and telling your story, or just reminding people what's available.
Mm-hmm. It's a good way to sell it, but yeah. I think we should have it in some way encouraging people to continue their education. You talked about lifelong learning, but if we identified how many people in the community have this level, how can we get them to the next level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was somewhere the other day when someone said that the education, especially our local organizations, institutions, they have way more data than we could ever imagine getting our hands on. So perhaps it needs to be, I'm just saying elevation of education levels is what I put on here, but I get what you're saying. And so really it's just about where are we now with every degree type and where do we want to go? And then asking ourselves, how are we connected to that? I don't know.
I'd like to see it on here to explore.
I'm going to put education on here to explore what that might look like.
Mm-hmm. I bet Don Shively.
Well, and it might be.
Will Black. They are data-driven folks, as you all know, Richard.
Yeah.
More people going to school.
And I don't mean to say this if you guys are thinking, let's make sure that we're not just talking about four-year college.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the vocational component is huge. We took kids to Murray State University and to a job fair, and showed them all the jobs, dirty jobs, if you will, that you could earn a great living, not a lot of debt, and then took them into a room and showed them all the infrastructure jobs that need people to fill them. Mm-hmm. And that I saw a couple of light bulbs, I think, go off.
I
wasn't
think
sure.
Certification should be included. It's not excluding that. If it's they get their certification, then maybe would their employer help pay them to get the next level and then to on up. But definitely just achieving something higher. Mm-hmm. So I'd really like to see an education component added.
Rich, I bet you saw a lot of light bulbs go off.
Yeah, they saw a lot of big paychecks, man. That's what those kids saw.
Yeah.
Okay, anything we're missing on here that you wish we would have included that we didn't? No? Okay. Thanks, guys, for sticking with it. All right. Next up, we have two more. Provide excellent recreation experiences for all ages and abilities.
Yes.
By a certain date, Paducah will host 5 yearly baseball, softball, soccer tournaments. By a certain date, raise X dollars for a Friends of the Park fund to help with maintenance and new citizen-led projects. By a certain date,
I'm sorry, can we put up there by a certain date, Paducah will host a state softball tournament? Can we, I mean, since we're putting that up there?
you have the Parks Director sitting next to you.
Come on, man.
Where's the Parks Director?
That's true. Where is he actually?
That's pretty specific.
Yeah, well, I got a friend in Owensboro that
Maybe you talk about a statewide tournament.
Well, I
Whether it
mean,
be softball,
We have
tennis,
softball tournaments.
baseball.
not just a softball tournament.
Yeah, that's very specific.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you leave it as a statewide tournament?
Well,
Where it would
I
be
know
soccer.
in the last few years, Owensboro's hosted the state tournament.
Oh, that's why you want it?
I'm like, okay. Well, you got to get off the interstate and drive 30 minutes to get to Owensboro. We're right here.
I would suggest leaving it as a statewide tournament level, but it's too specific to softball.
Okay.
You do it.
Okay.
Because there's baseball, there is soccer.
Well, yeah. Well, once we put
So you really want
once
to
we
say-
get the facilities up, then we can do what we want. But
Yeah, but we don't really have
to get a
facilities on here.
to get a state tournament here, then if we land that, then we've taken care of our business. Yeah, because they're not coming otherwise.
I'm going to put this as a suggestion for topic of conversation among the staff. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Where am I? Number 3. By a certain date, Parks and Recreation will become nationally accredited. By a certain date, shoreline and river-based recreation opportunities will be available. By a certain date, 20% more neighborhoods will have a trail within 1/2 mile of their neighborhood. By a certain date, citizens will have access to improved fields, after-school activities, indoor swimming, indoor recreation, and the Parks and Rec office in one centrally located facility. By a certain date, 80% of parks will be upgraded with consistent branding, signage, and appropriate equipment for their neighborhood's use. By a certain date, all parks plans will include input from senior focus groups to ensure programming and infrastructure is created for all ages. By a specific date, 20% more citizens will know how to help with park cleanliness and maintenance. And then I just wanted to make sure that we weren't forgetting everything that was already underway. So the farmers markets on here, events, and supporting community festivals, parades, and events. I'm pretty certain the goal is for the Parks Department to create some objectives around these things, correct?
How about 20% more citizens will know how to help with park and engage in?
Okay. We'll know how.
I'm thinking about
not just know how, but actually.
Yeah, like the garden clubs, like increasing their participation and that kind of thing.
We'll engage in park cleanliness.
Make maybe citizens and citizen groups.
Okay.
There is one other thing on the underway that you left off.
Are you painting something?
No. If we're to have a nationally accredited Parks and Rec department, we have had a statewide winner 3 years in a row.
We have for 3.
So we are state
4 out of 5
winners, 4 out of 5.
So
that would be, I would say we are on our way.
Keep winning.
Award-winning Parks Department.
So I'd say we're on our way.
Excellent.
Can we look back on number 1 when you were talking about maybe instead of specific to hosting that, if we improve the infrastructure to be able to, or with the goal to host that, but we can't host them if we don't improve the infrastructure.
Well, that's like I said, the last statement I made. If we get it, all of that what you just said has been taken care of.
But I think we need to have that on the goal to improve the infrastructure.
Well, while we're at it, while we're dealing in goals and things we'd like to see happen, maybe we figure out a way to convince our state government that cities should be allowed to raise taxes for sales tax if they wish, since we're one of 4 states in the country that aren't allowed, but that's a Frankfurt thing, not a local thing. Just saying.
Mayor, how
that goes with Parks and Rec.
You had mentioned this a while back about a sports commission.
Mm-hmm.
But some of this would fall within that purview?
I think so. I think that's a possibility. Actually, the reason why it didn't land on here, obviously, was because within the accreditation, you do end up creating some kind of advisory group. And so that's why I ended up not putting it on here. I think the commission thing is still a great opportunity, even to utilize what we already have. I do like the infrastructure upgrades if we could figure out how to pay for them. But there's a lot of fields at our disposal in Paducah, but it's the coordination of them. When I ask my friends who go off to these tournaments every weekend and say, okay, I've heard that you go to some pretty facilities, but tell me about the cities when they don't have the big facility. What do you do? And they say, oh yeah, we get in our car and drive around the city and go find all the fields. And so that still is an opportunity for our community right now with what we have. It's just the coordinating of that and marketing of that that's necessary to do. So I will add something around infrastructure to the ball fields. Can we keep number 1 by itself so that it still does allow for maybe the commission
Okay,
part of
we'll
that?
just add improve infrastructure is
Yeah.
another one on here.
Yeah, I'll put that on there. Okay. All right. Next up, last but not least, this is celebrate a diverse community. This number 1. This doesn't have as much of detail as the other ones did, so we can discuss a little bit if you want. But create a diversity council, which would help coordinate the current events and activities that are already happening around diversity and inclusion. It would also help identify gaps in necessary programming and projects to improve diversity and inclusion. Think kind of like an extended human rights commission, but that is specifically their job is around helping with the things I just said. Host some kind of multicultural festival. We do have a lot of cultures represented in Paducah, but oftentimes we're also separated from each other. We don't realize that. And then provide, again, I'm going to say assessment, and Commissioner Abraham, assessment and data tracking on the state of diversity and inclusion in Paducah. Any thoughts, feedback? Yep. Okay. So let's read this vision statement, and then we're going to move on with our lives. And that way we can finish with the vision statement and any feedback you have. Okay. So here is the statement as written right now. Paducah is a city where people strive to reach their full potential through lifelong learning, creativity, culture, and compassion for one another. Anyone love it, hate it?
Let's live with it and see
Where's that
how we
place?
feel.
Is that our place? Is that the goal?
That's the vision, right? All right, so if you don't mind, if you have other thoughts between now and May 8th, get them to me before the next meeting, and I will make sure they're shown in the edits of this, but we will bring that motion forward before you. Thank you for your time.
There was a public comment
we have a couple
to this plan.
Does anyone and have anything else they want to make sure? City manager?
No.
Okay. Commissioners?
No.
Okay. We have one thing I did. Well, Shirley left us today. She was here. Shirley Thompson is our chair of the Human Rights Commission, and she and her team helped to host the fair housing training today with the Lexington Fair Housing Council, and Commissioner Holland and I were able to make some of that. And it was absolutely incredible. The turnout, I think there were probably 40 people there.
I sat next to people from Hopkinsville.
Yeah. So, congratulations to her.
I do have one thing. I'm sorry. I will be getting to you all the survey that you all completed today on the dates for the commission budget workshops. We'll be getting those out very shortly.
Okay, and would Martin be able to get to us the dates on potential for the city manager applicants? Any of that kind of, we've had discussion about those dates, and we sent
21st and 22nd?
21st.
Yeah, is that confirmed? I
think he's waiting to hear back from a few people. Has he heard back from you?
Yeah, I was worried about the 9th, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll let you know tomorrow. They look okay.
The 9th of May?
That's for the video.
I guess so. Is that what they do first?
It's the dwindling down of
the culling.
I'll make it work. But I asked if we could move it up to 5 instead of 5:30.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's all it is. Can you do 5 on May 9th instead of 5:30?
What is that? What is that?
May 9th
to Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Wednesday.
At 5?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you get that to him? Do you mind?
Yes,
And let him know?
I'll do
So
that.
5 o'clock on May 9th, but then if that quicker he could let us know about the 21st and 22nd, would really be appreciated.
Okay, yes.
All right. We have 2. Who wants to go first? Okay. Come on up, Mr. McNeil.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for letting me speak before the commission tonight. I got my spreadsheet here. My objectives is 2 items. I need some information concerning that document on the park, Martin Luther King Park. I'd like to see it, or I'd like to have you to direct me to some place where I can see it. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is I would like, if possible, the location for all the private properties that's being maintained by the city. Okay, that's number 2. Now, I don't know if this is a baseline or it's a paradigm or if it's what's the other one, metric?
You know I'm not going to tolerate your...
Listen, this is a spreadsheet, ma'am. Okay?
Mr. McNeil, we deserve you to have respect. So if you can't do that, then you need to think about it.
I am thinking about it, but this is a spreadsheet, and I'm doing it objective, and here's the conclusion, okay? I want to make it crystal clear that the only motivation I've got is to reduce the taxes of all taxpayers, including myself. And as a taxpayer, I think I got the right to have this information I just requested.
Oh, you do, absolutely.
Okay,
I'm not pushing back on that.
But I didn't know if that, I don't know.
I'm pushing back on your lack of respect.
Is it a paradigm?
I'm not
Please help
answering
me,
you.
okay?
We will get you the documents that you're interested in or tell you how to find them. Thank you
very
for
much.
being
I
here
appreciate
tonight.
it. Okay.
Danny?
Thank you very much, Mayor and City Commission. I want to first wish you guys a Am Yisrael Chai, which means the Jews, the nation of Israel lives. This past week included the Holocaust Remembrance Day, as well as Israeli Remembrance Day and Israeli Independence Day. So it was a very fun week, and I enjoyed going to temple, seeing Paducah's living Jewish community. And as a self-proclaimed local historian, just want to let you know real quickly that on Broadway, any of those buildings that say wheel on them, the W-E-I-L-L-E, those are all part of our living Jewish history here in Paducah and proof that we've been here forever and have a very solid foundation here in Paducah.
It was my first trip inside of the temple for the Holocaust Remembrance Ceremony. It was amazing.
It was beautiful.
I can't believe I've never stepped foot in there before. It was really, the invitation was appreciated.
This was the first time I'd gone to. I was really, really impressed with it. It's a beautiful building. Yeah, it is. But I do actually want to talk about the city plan real quick. Sure. And I just want to go over a couple bullet points that I've highlighted on the number 5 in the infrastructure, bullet point 5. I think you had something about ADA compliance. That is actually an active problem. I know I work in the Medicaid Medicare industry, and my boss's girlfriend were downtown in the pouring rain, and I couldn't get her, motorized scooter onto it because she has MS, onto the, up the curb and onto the sidewalk in parts. It really does actively affect them here in Paducah. On the underway, that's super important. Yesterday, I nearly had my car wash away at Monroe Street, and then I live off Jackson Street, and Jackson Street is a nightmare, as we all know, anytime it sprinkles. So that's super important to have a long-term goal to, even if you have to say by 2080 or whatever, fix Jackson Street. Like, setting that now and saying you want to do it, you might actually have the opportunity by 2080, but if you say it now, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, where was it on Jackson? Was there
by the Romantics bookstore? The whole stretch between the S-curve with the bad railroad in the middle that I hate, which is also a bad part of Jackson. Everything from that intersection by the Taco John's down to the next light pretty much consistently floods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brown Street and all those areas,
yes,
right?
Brown Street, Main Street, those, essentially you're putting it down to one lane, and then people like me who have to turn off, it's rather challenging, On the culture and tourism, We should definitely do more festivals. I definitely like the idea of not only doing farmers market outside of downtown, but doing festivals outside of downtown. Most of our festivals are pretty much concentrated on Broadway or the squared parking lot down here. There's plenty of things on the south side. There's plenty of things out in Lone Oak that could be done, even on the mall side in Noble Park, just to give you more access for individuals who might not be able to get downtown. For instance, the Strawberry Festival, I mean, it's painted on the wall. We could bring that back with rather ease. Also, you said something about the Duchess Award. It would be brilliant to have a title given to humanitarians from Paducah or whatever called the Duke or Duchess of Paducah, the Irvin Cobb one, because he was the Duke of Paducah. It's a direct pull from our own history. You wrote something about changing the riverfront. And in there, you got the streets off a little bit because we just did the area from Monroe to the convention center, so we wouldn't really need to redo that. But the part from Monroe to Broadway could totally see that. That one's been there forever. And then also the location at Cuba Towhead, which is Myers and 3rd Street. It's on the south side. It would be a great location to give just a walk-up platform so that you could look out over it with a sign about Cuba Towhead or whatever, the river industry in Paducah. It would give Southsiders more access to the river. On number 8 in Parks and Rec, you should probably include, you had some specific groups like senior citizens. ADA should probably also go in there for the Parks Department. And recycling. Recycling. We should definitely include recycling bins in the public parks on Broadway, in other parts where we have trash cans. And I don't pay my own water bill. I have an apartment, so I can't really get a recycling bin. But if there was like at random parking lots throughout the city, big blue recycling bins like a garbage can, and I know my friends and other people would be happy to bring our own garbage or recycling and put it in there.
Well, you know there's a drop-off center too, right?
Where is it? I'm sorry, I didn't know.
No, that's okay.
It's Freedom Waste. It's
400 State Street.
400 State. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because I had way too much cardboard. I had to go there.
A lot of people. I have a couple people.
I'm loving it. That's good. That's good.
And in the tournaments, you should probably include cheerleading. I know a lot of people go down to Hopkinsville. We have cheerleading that goes on here.
I know they're going at the convention center now.
They're at the convention center. We hosted one, or not we, but the convention center hosted one.
Nice. That's a good idea. I'm sorry.
Yep.
You could do that in the.
That is all I wanted to say. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate you. Okay. I think that's all the public comments, and we do have an executive session. Who has the motion for that?
No, I do. I move that the board go into closed session for discussion of matters pertaining to the following topics: proposed or pending litigation as permitted by KRS 61.8101C.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. And we will come back out to adjourn.